No, I'm not here to sell you a bridge today, but what if I told you that you can earn an extra $100,000 or more through your Social Security benefits over the course of your lifetime, and that you might be surprised to know it's easier than you think? If you're intrigued, stay tuned to this week's episode of the Retirement Income Source. And welcome to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm David Scranton, here with my good friend and co-host, Sarah Samuels. And yes, it is true. Sometimes when we look at the several hundred different ways of taking Social Security, and usually there are more than 500 different ways of taking it, sometimes the difference between the number one best way and the number two best way could be an extra $100,000 or more of benefits over the course of your lifetime. So today, you're going to learn how to maximize those benefits if you're single, if you're married, if you're widowed, if you're divorced. And also, you're going to learn how those benefits might get reduced or how they might get taxed. So, Sarah, we have a really big agenda here today for those folks who are trying to make this decision about when to take Social Security.
That's right, Dave. And, it is a huge decision. So I am so happy to be here with you, of course, and with all of our listeners out there as we kind of explain how they can make this $100,000 in extra benefits over the course of their lifetime. Because at first, it does sound almost too good to be true, but the math does work out when you break it down by all those different factors Dave mentioned. Plus, once we explain how you can maximize each of those different things depending on what category you fall into. And we're going to be talking about pretty much everyone, I think. I think you mentioned everybody, right, Dave? Married people, single people, divorced, widowed.
And really anybody over the age of 50 who's starting to think about that, they're on that red zone getting into retirement, really needs to think about this. So I know you're not on the red zone getting into retirement, Sarah, but that's why I love living vicariously through you. So tell me, how was your weekend?
Yeah.
What'd you do?
Well, you know what, Dave? It was a pretty relaxed weekend. It was very nice, though. I always enjoy my weekends. It's fun coming in here with the studio and doing our radio show together, and then I go out and enjoy the weekend. So how about you? Did you have a good one?
Yeah, I actually had an unusual weekend this weekend. I got a chance to do 2 days of back-to-back fishing down in the lovely Florida Keys here. So that was pretty cool. It was nice. And this is the time of year you don't think about going down fishing so much. But, if you know what you're doing, you work hard, you can catch some good stuff. So,
did you catch anything?
I have a refrigerator full of fish. So
very nice.
Yeah,
look at you.
So if up go my mercury levels. Look out. But yeah, today it's interesting because some of the factors that are out there are what kind of health you're in personally. Your longevity in your family, genetics might affect that for both you and your spouse, and whom you think might live longer and why. But also, do you plan to continue working in retirement? That could be an issue that helps affect your decision. And how much income do you get from other places, pensions, Social Security? That can affect your decision also. And in addition to how much money you've saved, right? Because it's great to say, gosh, I want to take Social Security a certain way because I'll get more from the system. But if you can't afford to retire by taking it that way, then it just, in the real world, it doesn't make any sense.
Yep. And I think for most people, that decision starts with, well, what age should I start collecting my Social Security benefits? And our Ask Dave question, starting off the show, we have a question from Charles in Nebraska who says, what's my break-even point? When do I know it's time to take my Social Security benefits?
Well, Charles, your break-even point can depend. First of all, Charles, thank you for being a regular listener. We appreciate you writing in. That's awesome. And it depends upon your situation. But, Charles, think of it this way. The earliest you can take Social Security is age 62. The latest you can take it is age 70. And your standard age, the full retirement age, FRA, where you get something called your PIA, your primary insurance amount. And by the way, you can go to Social Security Administration, SSA.gov, put in some personal information, answer some questions, and you can find out what your PIA is. And that's the amount that you're going to receive at your full retirement age. And Charles, depending upon your age, your full retirement age is going to be anywhere between age 66 and 67. Okay. Now, if you take it early, you get a reduction. And if your full retirement age is at 67, then you take it at 62, which is the earliest you can take it. You're essentially going to have a 30%, actually in that case, a 20 gosh, no, a 30% reduction. Yeah, full 30% reduction in benefits. If you wait to age 70, you'll get 24% extra. Well, if you do the math, it's almost double at age 70, the latest age, versus age 62, the earliest age. Almost double. And with cost of living increases, it very well could be double. So that means your break-even point would be about age 78 for most people, right? Because you get half the benefits from 62 to 70, and then if you took it early, you get half the benefits from 70 to 78, versus getting the full benefit from 70 to 78. So not factoring in time value of money, Charles, and what you could have done had you invested those lower benefits if you got it earlier. Usually you have to live into your late 70s to break even. So that simply means if you think you're going to make it in your 80s, it's better to wait. So says the math. If you think you're not going to make it in your 80s, maybe it's better to take it early. But again, Charles, a lot of things we're going to talk about later in the show that affect it, such as your marital status, are you going to be working, all other sources of income, and so on. So Charles, stay with us so you can get the rest of your question answered.
Yeah. And Charles, thank you so much for sending in your question for Dave. And if any of our listeners out there, even our YouTube viewers, have a retirement question that you would like Dave to answer, all you have to do is send us an email at askdave@retirementincomesource. That's SOURCE.com. And thank you here for listening to us right here on the Retirement Income Source, where it is all about the income. Today, we're covering Social Security and all of the different factors that really you should think about when you're determining when to take your Social Security and how you should take it. And we mentioned at the top of the show that if you maximize your Social Security, you can earn close to $100,000 in extra benefits or more, even more, exactly, around $100,000 in more benefits over the course of your lifetime. So I'm here with Dave Scranton. I'm Sarah Samuels, and we're going to explain how you can do this. So Dave, we just talked to Charles, and you talked about a break-even point, but you mentioned there's a lot of different factors that go in to determining when to take Social Security, like if you're married or not. So can you tell me a little bit about how it changes if you're married versus if you're single or even widowed?
Well, Sarah, where the differential comes in here is that, think about it, in most relationships, do both spouses earn the exact same amount of income?
Typically, no.
No, one makes more than the other, right? Yeah. So that means the lower earning spouse in a marriage has a choice. He or she can either collect off his or her benefits, or can collect half of the primary wage earner's Social Security benefits. So if that lower earning spouse was significantly lower, then he or she can get half of his or her spouse's, the primary wage earner's benefits. So even if that lower earning spouse made virtually zero, hardly worked at all, he or she can still get half the benefit. So that's one way that it matters.
Yeah.
Another way is the fact that, you tell me, do both spouses typically keel over at the same time?
No, typically men actually die before females.
And do you know why men die before their wives?
Why
Sarah?
is that, Dave?
Because they want to. That's why, in case you're wondering.
That's escape.
Right. That's right. Now that I offended half of our listenership here. But the same is true at death. Because now let's say a higher earning spouse gets $3,000 a month and the lower earning spouse collects $1,500, really the spousal benefit. But then if the $3,000 a month higher wage earner dies first, that lower income spouse who got the spousal benefit, their benefit will now step up to $3,000 a month. So he or she will have to forfeit that lower benefit, the $1,500 a month, but will end up with the higher benefit. So when you're dealing with spouses, you have to look at the differentials in income and also the differentials in life expectancy, because the spousal benefit and because of the survivorship benefit. But Sarah, we'll talk even more about that coming up when we talk about divorced spouses. We talk about widows, as well as lots of other factors that can affect your Social Security benefits adversely or in your favor. Stay tuned. I'm David Scranton here with Sarah Samuels, and this is the Retirement Income Source where, it is all about the income.
You're listening to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm Sarah Samuels here with the host, David Scranton, and today's show is about Social Security and all of the different factors that go into when you should decide to take Social Security or not. So we talked a little bit about the full retirement age, which is dependent on the year you were born, and we also talked a little bit about what happens if you're married versus you're unmarried. So Dave, can you go over again what happens if you have two spouses, two people in a couple, and they're earning wildly wildly different incomes throughout their life, what happens to their Social Security benefits?
Sure. So, if let's just take the extreme, right?
Yep.
Let's say one spouse was stay-at-home parent,
Okay.
right? And the other spouse is working full-time. So you have one spouse that maximizes the benefits, another spouse that has zero income through his or her lifetime. Well, you might think, well, does that spouse get zero? No, that spouse can qualify for half of what the higher wage earner's benefits are at any given time, right? So if that higher wage earner in the example we gave just before the break is getting a $3,000 a month benefit, then that lower earning spouse is guaranteed to get at least $1,500 a month. Now, if that lower earning spouse earned enough to get $2,000 a month, well, then he or she can collect off his or her own benefits. So that 50% spousal benefit is kind of like a safety net in case one spouse really didn't work much at all.
Got you. Like a universal income almost if maybe one spouse was truly a stay-at-home parent the entire time, essentially.
That's correct.
Okay. Well,
That's
that makes
correct.
sense. I think that's kind of nice, though, because we know, of course, stay-at-home parents, that's really a 24/7 job, not just an 8-hour-a-day job,
And
right?
it's an important investment in our future of our country, right? I mean, making sure, you just can't fluff the kids off to school and hope that they get all the education they need. I mean, all that stuff starts at home, and that's why that's such an important role. And, but then, like we also mentioned, it goes further than that, right? It then says, okay, what happens if one spouse dies first, right? Because two spouses very seldom die at the same time.
Right. Yep. Typically, the men die first, unfortunately.
Right. And of course, we talked about why that is, right?
That's
We don't need
true.
to repeat that bad joke. But so let's say in this case, the spouse that stayed home, that has a $1,500 benefit, dies first. Well, then the higher wage earner who's getting a $3,000 benefit just keeps his or her home benefit for the rest of his or her life. And that's simple. So the higher earning spouse loses the lower $1,500 benefit. But conversely, what happens if the higher earning spouse dies first, right? The one that was getting the $3,000 monthly benefit. Well, now what happens, that lower earning spouse gives up his or her $1,500 a month benefit and now takes on the $3,000 a month benefit. So you see, no matter what happens, who dies first, the surviving spouse gets to keep the higher benefit and give up the lower benefit. So now you get into all kinds of planning opportunities where, oftentimes the higher income spouse might wait till age 70, right, the maximum age, to get the maximum benefit. Because now it's not just calculating the break even, as Charles asked in the last segment, calculating the break even on his life, but now you're calculating the break even on both your lives. And the chance of one spouse making it past 78 or 80 is much greater than the chance of any one person doing it. So that's a common planning technique.
Yep. Well, we talked about what happens if you're married and you're taking Social Security, what happens if you're single, what happens if you're a widow or widower and you're taking Social Security benefits. But what if you're divorced, Dave? Our next Ask Dave question actually comes from Karen in Connecticut. She says, I'm divorced and my ex-husband was a pretty high earner. Is there a way for me to collect his Social Security benefit?
All right, Karen. Well, there very well may be, but there's a few factors that come into play here. First of all, you have to be married for 10 years to your ex-spouse. And second of all, you can't get remarried. He can get remarried, it doesn't matter, but you cannot get remarried. Once you get remarried, then your spousal benefit will be contingent upon your new spouse. So the whole idea is, number one, if you've clicked over that 10-year mark, then I guess, Karen, if you do get remarried, I guess you want to upgrade. You want to marry up, Sarah, right? That would be the plan.
Replace that benefit,
otherwise,
right?
you might lose some Social Security benefits. I'm just kidding, actually. But, Karen, the second part of the equation comes with, okay, what happens about, divorced survivor benefits, right?
That's when it can get tricky if somebody dies.
That's right.
Yeah.
And obviously the order has to be divorce and then survivor, because if your spouse dies, then you can't divorce the person. It's too late, right? So,
Right.
But if you get divorced and that person dies, then also you have a chance, again, assuming you've been married for 10 years or more, and assuming that you have not remarried, then you can collect that survivorship benefit. So, I hate to say it, but there's reasons why sometimes people later in life get married for financial reasons, and also times when people later in life don't get married. So, Karen, this is an example where some people may be tempted not to get married because, hey, I've got a higher benefit with my ex-husband, and I can collect that. No cost to him. It doesn't affect him, so nobody really cares. But I can collect that benefit. And then there's other times where the opposite happens, when you say, well, I want to collect. If my new spouse dies, I want to get married, because if that spouse dies, I want to make sure that my wife gets that benefit. So I'm going to get married for that purpose. So, Karen, I hope that helps at all. But hey, don't let the tail wag the dog. So if you're going to get married, do it for the right reasons. Social Security is only a secondary consideration.
Well, Karen, thank you so much for sending in your retirement question. And if any of our listeners out there have a question that you'd like Dave to answer, all you have to do is send us an email, and you may hear your question answered on a future show. Our email address is askdave@retirementincomesource. That's SOURCE.com. And thank you for spending your weekend here with us on the Retirement Income Source, where it is all about the income. I'm Sarah Samuels here with David Scranton, and we're talking about Social Security and the several different factors that go into deciding when to take Social Security, if you're married, if you're not married, and how that can affect your benefits, because ultimately the goal is really you want to maximize those Social Security benefits. So, Dave, what else do people need to know in particular about divorce when it comes to Social Security benefits?
It's so funny, because I hate to talk about marriage when we talk about money and financial decisions.
It's not very romantic.
But a lot of people in life get married for financial reasons, or they don't get married for financial reasons, right? So first of all, to make one thing clear, when it comes to Social Security, at least, there's never a reason to get divorced for financial reasons, because that's not going to help you, because if anything, you lose the spousal benefit. So that's not an issue. But the question is, okay, if you're single, should you consider getting married? Well, the times people tend to do that are if one person's Social Security is a lot higher, right? And they want to get married, to say, hey, if I die first, I want my spouse to be able to get my higher benefit, or maybe I want my spouse to be able to get the spousal benefit while I'm alive. Or sometimes a reason to get married might be, gosh, I have a big pension plan, and I want to put my spouse on as a survivor, but I've got to be legally married. I can't have a significant other as a survivor. So I get married before I take my monthly income from my pension, to make sure that my spouse can get that, so I can take care of this person I care about, right? Those are some reasons people get married, for financial reasons. But again, what are the reasons people don't get married? Well, sometimes they don't get married for Social Security reasons, right? Because you have an ex-spouse that has a higher benefit, where you might get a better spousal benefit from that if you were a lower wage earner, or a better survivorship benefit if your old spouse dies than if your new potential spouse dies, right? That's one reason not to get married. But also sometimes it's just about goals with the kids, keeping things separate, right? That if you have children from your initial marriages, you might say, well, you know what, I want to keep things separate. I want to share our expenses, but I want to make sure when I die, my kids get mine, his or her kids get theirs. So there are some financial reasons. And again, I hate to say that, but think about it. It makes sense. One of the major reasons for divorce today is because people disagree about what?
Money. Money is the biggest reason for divorce.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So if that's the fact, then I guess it makes a little bit of sense maybe to factor that in the equation about whether or not somebody should get married in the first place. I don't know.
And if you have multiple divorces, Dave, like let's say we have someone that's been married 5, 6, 7 times.
Unlucky in love.
They rushed to the altar, maybe, I don't know. But does that really affect the Social Security benefit if you have a lot of ex-spouses out there?
Well, let's say, I were unlucky in love, right?
Okay.
And I was married 4 times for 10 years and a day. I could potentially have 4 ex-wives collecting spousal benefits, survivor benefits off my benefit if they didn't get remarried. But it doesn't affect me at all. And also, I don't know when they're claiming it, right? So they have total privacy. They don't. Sometimes people worry about, I don't want my ex knowing. Well, they don't have to. I wouldn't know.
Right. Yeah.
And frankly, it doesn't cost me anything. So. It's a pretty generous system.
Yep. Well, luckily, you're not going to have your benefit reduced by all those ex-wives trying to collect, but there might be other occasions where your Social Security benefit is reduced. Maybe it's getting taxed too much. So we're going to talk about all of those other scenarios coming up. I'm Sarah Samuels here with Dave Scranton, and you're listening to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. Welcome back to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm Sarah Samuels here with Dave Scranton, and thank you for spending your weekend here with us as we're discussing ways for you to help maximize your Social Security benefits. So there's a lot of different factors that go into determining your Social Security, when you should take it, and one of those factors is whether you're divorced or married or maybe even widowed. So we've covered all of those situations and how you can maximize your benefits in each. And Dave and I were just joking a few minutes ago that, hey, if you got 5 or 6 ex-wives out there are some times when they might be able to collect on your benefit, right? If you were married over 10 years. But luckily, it doesn't affect your benefit, right? It doesn't mean that you're getting less in Social Security benefits. But there are times when your benefit might get reduced. So Dave, let's talk about some of those times, like maybe when you go back to work, if you unretire even.
Yeah, so it's a much bigger issue today because today's retiree, Sarah, as you know, isn't yesterday's retiree. You know, the idea of you retire at 65, you get the pension, Social Security, you never work again. It's different. Today's retiree wants a sense of fulfillment. They really want to be on the top of Maslow's pyramid, right? Self-actualization. And for a lot of people, that's work. Now, some people work because they have to, they can't afford to retire. Some people work for just the play money, the fun money in those go-go years, right? Yeah. But others work for challenge, challenge to keep their minds active. Some work for the social aspect, right? Because you know you spend 8 hours a day with these people, and all of a sudden you're home with your spouse, you're looking at each other. So if you don't have a huge network of friends, then you know maybe the social aspect at work is even more important. So, but that's the biggest factor is you know, are you going to work while collecting your benefits? Because here's the rub. If you work and you make more than $21,000 a year before full retirement age, now remember, full retirement age is anywhere between 66 and 67 years old, depending upon your date of birth, your year of birth. But if you take Social Security benefits early and you earn from work more than $21,000 a year, then you will have to give up $1 of benefits for every $2 you earn over that threshold. Okay,
that's a lot.
That's a lot. So think about it. So let's say you make $41,000 instead of $21,000. That's you're $20,000 over the limit, which means now you have to give up $10,000 of Social Security benefits. Okay, and it doesn't get much better after full retirement age, because you know when you get up to age between then and age 70. Then it's a $1 reduction for every $3 you are over the limit. Okay, so now if you're at $41,000 of income, i.e. $20,000 over the limit, then you give up $6,700 of benefits, right? So in the real world, if you know you're going to work in retirement, real world, you make over that threshold, you just don't take your Social Security, you wait. However, if you take it and plan to work, then you want to keep the income under that threshold.
Yep. It's really important, and especially when you talk about taxes. And our next Ask Dave question actually has to do with taxes because, yes, there could be taxes associated with those Social Security benefits. So our question actually comes from Lucas in Tennessee. He says, I am worried about paying taxes on my Social Security benefits. Can you tell me the threshold for those numbers?
Well, Lucas, you're a smart man to be worried about it for sure, because I know we had George Bush, Senior, who said, you know, read my lips, no new taxes, and first instituted taxation on Social Security benefits. And then a few years later, President Clinton came out and said, well, now we're going to hike that tax even a bit higher. And right now, you could pay taxes on as much as 85% of your Social Security benefits if you have too much income. Now, that doesn't mean the tax equals 85%, Lucas. That means that you have to claim 85% of those benefits on your tax return as taxable income. So you know, in other words, if you have a $40,000 a year benefit, $34,000 might have to be claimed as taxable, and only $6,000 is tax-free. But that's if you make a lot of money. Well, Lucas, hang on, because a lot of money really isn't a lot of money anymore. See, the government has this formula, and it's called the MAGI formula, M-A-G-I, Modified Adjusted Gross Income. And Lucas, what that includes is your income from all sources, half your Social Security benefit, and your tax-free municipal bond interest. So tax-free municipal bond interest may not be tax-free. If that number is over $25,000 and you're single, then you will have to pay taxes on some of your Social Security, maybe as much as half. So think about it. Half your Social Security could get you close to that $25,000. A little bit of pension, a little bit of rental income, a little bit of 401k IRA withdrawal, boom, you're over that $25,000 threshold, and as much as almost half of the benefit might be taxed. Now, if that income number goes over $34,000, then up to 85% of the benefit can be taxed. Now, Lucas, if you're married, those numbers are slightly higher. Now, when that modified adjusted gross income for you and your spouse together get over $32,000, then up to half the benefits could be taxed. But again, that $32,000 could be just half your Social Security. It literally could be that for you and your spouse if you're higher wage earners. Then when that number gets over $44,000, as much as 85% could be taxed. So bottom line, Lucas, if you've done a good job, you've saved money, and you're going to have a nice, comfortable retirement, I hate to say it, but you're just going to have to plan to save taxes on this, or pay taxes on that Social Security benefit.
Yep. And Lucas, thank you for sending in your Ask Dave question. And if any of our listeners out there, our YouTube viewers, have a question about retirement or Social Security or taxes, please send us your questions. We'd love to hear from you. You can send us an email at askdave@Retirement Income Source. That's SOURCE.com. You're listening to the Retirement Income Source, where it is all about the income. And we're talking about ways you can maximize your Social Security benefits. And if it sounds complicated, it really can be, and that's why it's important to work with an income specialist on all of these different pieces, especially Social Security, because you do not want to end up paying 85% having to claim that on your taxes, do you, Dave? I don't think it's not the losing income show, right? It's all about gaining income.
Well, the point is you want to maximize your income, but you want to maximize your after-tax income.
Minimize your
right?
taxes while maximizing your income.
That's right. Yep. It's not what you get, it's what you keep. And, the taxation issue is an issue, and there are some ways around it. Although I told Lucas, you might be stuck paying it. Lucas, I hope you're still listening. But, you can get around it somewhat. For example, some people, if they retire before age 72, that's the age of required minimum distributions, might say, okay, I'm not going to take money out of those IRAs and 401ks because that's all taxable. I'm going to take my Social Security and I'm going to spend down some non-taxable money, some money that's maybe in a brokerage account or in a Roth IRA I can get tax-free, because then I can get tax-free Social Security for a few years. Why? Because I know darn well that once I start taking those required minimum distributions, all those IRA and 401k withdrawals are taxable, and it's going to cause me to max out taxes on my Social Security. So that's one strategy that could work, is postponing those IRA 401k withdrawals. And just looking at your buckets of money, determining how to take income based upon those buckets. Some people say or do the opposite. Some people say, I want to close out my IRAs and 401ks early on. I'm going to retire at 65, and I'm going to convert that money to Roth IRAs over 5 years, over 7 years, right? And I won't take Social Security until 70. So now they're taking money out, they're paying tax on it, and they're converting it to tax-free Roths. They let their Social Security get maximized by age 70. They start to take it at age 70, and now they can get most of that benefit tax-free because they paid all the taxes earlier on in retirement. So again, there's different ways to kind of sort of mitigate the tax, but let's say you're a school teacher or a retired firefighter, retired police officer. We have a huge pension income coming in, respectable pension income. Well, then in that case, you're stuck paying the tax.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, Dave, it sounds kind of like what you're saying is making that decision with Social Security. It doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? There's a whole pie when it comes to your retirement, and your Social Security benefits are just one piece of it, and they all are related to each other, right? Nothing operates independently of each other. So I think when we come back, we should talk a little bit more about those other pieces, Dave, and how Social Security benefits really incorporate with your other income, your savings, and your strategy with retirement.
And it goes both ways.
Yeah.
It's kind of like how you're invested can affect when to take Social Security. Or it could be that if you want to take Social Security in a certain way because it makes economic sense, you get more from the benefit, that extra $100,000 over the course of your lifetime or more, right? Then you may want to alter your asset allocation, how your money's invested, to make up for the difference. So I think that you're right. I think we need to cover that for sure.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I'm Sarah Samuels, and I'm here with Dave Scranton. You're listening to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income.
And welcome back to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm David Scranton, here with Sarah Samuels. And today we're talking about a particular type of income, and that is Social Security. And yes, I wasn't kidding when I said that oftentimes when we do analyses for people about the best ways to take Social Security, of 500 plus different ways, sometimes the difference between the number one best way and the number two best way could be as much as $100,000 or more of cumulative additional benefits over the course of your lifetime. And Sarah, the factors, right, what we talk about so far, one is, are you single or are you married? Right?
That's a huge factor.
Are you single or are you married? How long your life expectancy is based upon longevity in your family, based upon your own health.
Right. Plus the other sources of income too, Dave, and how those can be affected in ways that you might be able to even lose your Social Security benefits, depending on if you're receiving income from other sources. And we've talked about taxes and ways to avoid those taxes, because we want to help you maximize your benefits while also minimizing those taxes on them.
Right. And good rule of thumb is if you plan to work in retirement and make more than $21,000 a year of earned income, whether you're self-employed, whether you're W-2 employee somewhere, then best bet is if you're going to do that, don't take Social Security until you absolutely have to, because that'll cause a reduction in benefit. And then when it comes to taxation, you know, like we said, that has to do with income from all sources. And Sarah, this is a big point of confusion for a lot of people. They say, I get confused between when Social Security can be reduced versus when it could be taxed. Well, when you're talking about whether or not Social Security could be reduced, the only type of income that matters is earned income. That counts against you. But when you talk about whether or not Social Security could be taxed, now it's all sources of income, literally all, including tax-free municipal bond income, right?
Yeah.
And I bet you thought tax-free municipal bond income was tax-free.
Hey, it says in the name tax-free, so you know that's why I was confused. But unfortunately, no.
And the catch is, it is tax-free. But guess what? It can cause your Social Security to be taxed. So it's not as tax-free as you might think.
Right. And there's a lot of different pieces, Dave. We talked a lot about retirement being this pie, right? And Social Security being a piece of it. But again, you want all parts of this pie to line up, and you want all parts of your strategy to make sense. So our next Ask Dave question comes from Daniel in New York. And he says, why should my investment strategy line up with when I want to take Social Security? What do they have to do with each other?
Daniel, boy, well, do you have a couple hours? The show doesn't. We don't have that much time left on the show. But look, nothing exists in a vacuum, and you can imagine with anything, it's a bit like whack-a-mole. There's cause and effect. You change one thing, it affects something else. So let's look at it this way. Okay? If you're retiring and you plan to take Social Security early, you're going to have reduced Social Security benefit. So it means you need to draw more income from your investments, right? So that goes to the equation we always talk about in the show, Daniel, my favorite equation. Sarah, you know what that is?
The Make Your Millions Last formula?
The Make Your Millions Last formula. That's right. TR equals I plus G. Total return equals income plus growth. Because, Daniel, in your accumulation years, you want to get total return. You don't care if it comes from the I or the G, from the income or the growth. But when you're retired, it does, because you can't spend growth. You can always spend income, right? So if you take your Social Security early, you're going to have a bigger income shortfall relative to your goals, which means now you've got to make sure your investments are generating a significant amount of income, a higher interest payment, a higher dividend payment. So you're probably going to be in things that pay income. But what if you want to wait and take your Social Security at age 70, right? Because you're going to bet with yourself, not against yourself. You're going to bet that you live to be 90-some years old, and God willing, I hope you do. Then in that case, you might need to spend down the principal of some of your investments in the early years of retirement, because Social Security won't kick in until age 70. And if that's the case, then you want to make sure you have a chunk of investments that are secure, that you can liquidate to spend in those earlier retirement years without worrying about the markets dropping and everything going down. Because again, if you can delay Social Security, Daniel, and get 8% increases in benefits, that's pretty good, right? Think about it. If you get an 8% FDIC insured CD, are you going to want to put some of your money in it? Of course you will. And that's essentially what Social Security offers, right? But you've got to have other investments that are conservative enough that you can spend down to supplement your income. So again, it affects you, because if you want to take the benefits late, you've got to be conservative with a chunk of your investments. If you want to take them early, then your investments have to generate that much more income, because your Social Security will be less. So hope that answers your question, Daniel.
Yep. And Daniel, thank you for sending us your Ask Dave retirement question. And if any of our listeners or our YouTube viewers out there have a question that you would like to ask Dave, maybe it's about Social Security or maybe it's about ways you can help minimize your taxes on your income. But if you have a question, just send us an email at askdave@retirementincomesource. That's SOURCE.com. And thank you for spending your weekend here with us on the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. And today we've talked about a very specific type of income, and that's Social Security benefits. And there are a lot of different things that go into when you should decide to take them, and of course, if they can ever be reduced or even or taxed, of course. So. Again, Dave, it's important for people, I think, to think about this transition, right? We always talk about this big transition, and that's before you retire and kind of transitioning your mindset and really thinking about all those different income pieces.
Right. And the transition needs to start about 10 years before retirement in the ideal world, which is the same time you should be starting to think about your Social Security benefits. So we get people coming to our webinars, coming to our workshops that want to retire at 70, they're 60. Some want to retire at 65, they're 55, because they're starting to prepare. They're starting to get their head around it. And in Daniel's case, we just talked about, okay, if you want to take Social Security early, how you handle your investments. If you want to take it late, how you handle your investments. But what if it's the opposite, right? What if you're a dyed-in-the-wool, aggressive, growth-oriented person, and now you say, well, I want to stay aggressive because I love it. I think the markets are going to do great. How does that affect my Social Security decision, right? What if the tail wags the dog instead of the dog wagging the tail?
Right. What happens?
Well, I think in that case, that person has to say, I've got to, if I'm 60 years old and I want to stay aggressive, then I've got to think about, okay, either I'm going to work till age 70, or if I retire early, I've got to realize that, okay, as long as the markets are cooperating, I could sell some stocks and stock funds that have gone up in value to fund my retirement. But as soon as there's a bear market and that thing goes downward, that maybe I need to give up on my plan to delay Social Security, and I've got to take it early, right? So if I'm a dyed-in-the-wool, aggressive, growth-oriented investor, and I love all the artificial intelligence stocks and everything else, then I've either got to work or realize that I might have to not delay it if the markets don't cooperate.
Yeah.
And then there might be another way of looking at that too, right? Somebody might turn around and say, well, I'm a good enough investor that I want to take Social Security early because I think I can make it grow over the next 8 years and do really well. And that's a slippery slope, right? Because 8 years isn't a long period. So therefore, I'll take it early because I can invest it, right? But bottom line is these decisions go together. They cannot be separated.
Yep. And that's why, again, you should really work with an income specialist when it comes to making these decisions, because they're a little bit different than what your average financial planner out there, financial advisor is coming up with, because our income specialists, they focus on these big decisions and they can help you walk through all of these different things and determine what's best for you. Plus the software. I think you might have mentioned, Dave, a lot of our advisors actually have that specialized software that can help determine the best time for you, your specific situation, when to take Social Security.
Well, an income specialist will, yes.
Yeah, our income specialist.
Yeah, most retirement planners won't, because retirement planners, their job is to plan for your retirement. So that's when you're 30 years out, 20 years out, and they want to project with inflation how much income you think you'll need at retirement and how much you need to save to get there based upon some assumed growth rates, and they're planning in advance for your retirement. So your retirement planner is somebody who's going to work with you in the accumulation years. But an income specialist is somebody who's going to work with you in your distribution years, that is when you're retired, or in that red zone leading up to retirement, those last 10 years, as they slowly transition you, again, from a total return mindset where you don't care where that total return comes from, the I or the G, the income or the growth, to a mindset of, it's income first, growth second. And sir, I think that's important, because I think some people think when you transition to an income mindset, you have to give up growth. And the reality is you don't have to. It's just an income first, growth second mindset.
Yep, that's one of those misconceptions about income. So if you're looking for an income specialist in your area, all you have to do is go to retirementincomesource.com. You can actually check out our map on the website and find someone in your area that can help you with these specific decisions. Because personally, Dave, I think it's too much to do alone, and I caution the do-it-yourselfers out there, because it's a different story these days.
One chance of retirement. If you mess it up, you're working forever. So
Yeah, absolutely.
don't try this at home.
Don't try it at home. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to our episode of the Retirement Income Source. If you enjoyed this show, maybe you want to share it with your family or friends, all you have to do is go to retirementincomesourceradioshow.com, and all of our past episodes are there.
And most importantly, we hope that you join us right here next week, same time, same station. I'm David Scranton here with Sarah Samuels, and this is the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income.